So sorry. That was the custodian. I just asked if he could come back in 5 minutes. He said no problem. Whew, where did I leave off? Yes. The poor old rhododendron flopped onto its side. They lugged the bush to the opposite side of the yard where there was a mound of dirt, and they replanted the bush. Maybe there's something hidden under the bush, Phoebe said. Like what? Like Mr. Cadaver, as I told you before. Maybe Mr. Berkway helped her chop up her husband and bury him, and maybe they were getting worried and decided to disguise the spot with a rhododendron bush. I must have looked skeptical. Phoebe said, Sal, you never can tell. And Sal, I don't think you or your father should go over there anymore. I certainly agreed with her on that one. Dad and I had been over there 2 nights earlier, and I'd hardly been able to sit still. I started noticing all these frightening things in Margaret's house. Creepy masks, old swords, and books with titles like The Murders in the Rue Morgue and The Skull and the Hatchet. Margaret cornered me in the kitchen and said, So, what has your father told you about me? Nothing, I said. Oh. She seemed disappointed. My father's behavior was always different at Margaret's. At home, I would sometimes find him sitting on his bed, staring at the floor, or reading through old letters, or gazing at the photo album. He looked sad and lonely. But at Margaret's, he'd smile, and sometimes even laugh. And once she touched his hand, and he let her hand rest there on top of his. I didn't like it. I didn't want my father to be sad, but at least when he was sad, I knew he was remembering my mother. So, when Phoebe suggested that my father and I should not go to Margaret's, I was quite willing to agree with that notion. When Phoebe's mother came home from running all her errands, she looked terrible. She was sniffling and blowing her nose. Phoebe said that we were going to do our homework. Upstairs, I said, maybe we should have helped her put away the groceries. She likes to do that all by herself, Phoebe said. Are you sure? Of course I'm sure, Phoebe said. I've lived here my whole life, haven't I? Well, she looked as if she'd been crying. Maybe something's wrong. Maybe something's bothering her. Don't you think she would say so then? Maybe she's afraid to, I said. Can you turn and talk to your partner right now? Or to a person that's near you? Why do you think that Phoebe's mom would have come home sniffling, blowing her nose? I have a feeling it has more to do with, she has a little cold. I have a feeling she's been crying. What might she be crying about? Turn and talk. Okay, can I have everyone's eyes back up here, please? Don't you think she would say so then? Maybe she's afraid to, I said. I wondered why it was so easy for me to see that Phoebe's mother was worried and miserable, but Phoebe couldn't see it, or if she could, she was ignoring it. Maybe she didn't want to notice. Maybe it was too frightening a thing. I wondered if this was how it had been with my mother. Were there things I didn't notice? Later that afternoon, when Phoebe and I went downstairs, Mrs. Winterbottom was talking with Prudence. Do you think I lead a tiny life? She asked. How do you mean? Prudence said, as she filed her nails. Do we have any nail polish remover? Okay, class. Mrs. Winterbottom just asked her daughter a really deep, profound question. Do you think I live a tiny life? Basically, she's asking, do you think my existence is important? Do you think what I'm doing here on earth it matters and it makes a difference? And Prudence's response to that is, do you have any nail polish remover? It seems like Mrs. Winterbottom's family, kind of like we saw at the dinner table, where every time they didn't notice her, she would. It seems like that is continuing here, that they're just not aware. Phoebe isn't aware that her mom was sad or that she'd been crying. Prudence kind of oblivious to the fact that her mom is asking her such this deep question. She's more concerned about her nails. Phoebe's mother retrieved a bottle of nail polish remover from the bathroom. Oh, Prudence said, before I forget, do you think you could sew up the hem on my brown skirt so I could wear it tomorrow? Oh, please. Prudence tilted her head to the side and tugged at her hair in exactly the same way Phoebe does, and she smooshed up her mouth into a little pout. Doesn't Prudence know how to sew? I asked. Of course she does, Phoebe said. Why? I was just wondering why she doesn't sew her own skirt. Sal, you're being very critical. Before I left Phoebe's that day, Mrs. Winterbottom handed Prudence her brown skirt with the newly sewn hem, and all the way home I wondered about Mrs. Winterbottom and what she meant about living a tiny life. If she didn't like all that baking and cleaning and jumping up to get bottles of nail polish remover and sewing hems, why'd she do it? Why didn't she tell them to do some of these things themselves? Maybe she's afraid there'd be nothing left for her to do. There'd be no need for her, and she'd be invisible, and no one would notice. When I got home that day, my father handed me a package. It's from Margaret, he said. What is it? I don't know. Why don't you open it? Inside was a blue sweater. I put it back in the box and went upstairs. My father followed me. Sal, do you like it? I don't want it, I said. She was just trying to... She likes you. I don't care if she likes me or not, I said. My father stood there, looking around the room. I want to tell you something about Margaret, he said. Well, I don't want to hear it. I was feeling so completely ornery. When my father left the room, I could still hear my own voice saying, I don't want to hear it. I sounded exactly like Phoebe. That's the end of the chapter. No moaning, no groaning. I'm not going to have it. Chapter 15, A Snake Has a Snack. We'll read that when I'm back tomorrow. But before we finish our read aloud time, can you turn and talk to the person next to you? What do you think it is that Sal's dad wanted to share with her about Margaret when he said, I want to tell you something about Margaret? What do you think it was that he wanted to tell her? Turn and talk. Okay, Miss Edelyn, you can go ahead and stop the video and call kids to come back to their desks. Thank you, everybody.